these will substantially become cheaper, almost near zero import duties. And that's great for Indian exporters. Similarly, British cars like JLR, Aston Martin, etc., and British spirits, whiskies and gins will become considerably cheaper here in the Indian market. This free trade agreement, this deal has been years in the making. 3 years of formal negotiations. I remember Boris Johnson, when he was Prime Minister in the summer of 2022, when he came to India, first announced that they are starting negotiations for the FTA. They were supposed to wrap it up within 6 months. That became 3 years now. Britain has had multiple prime ministers in that interim. But finally, it was Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Starmer of Britain who finally today oversaw the signing off ceremony of the India-UK FTA. But you cannot look at this FTA, you cannot look at this trade deal in isolation. It comes in a very, very symbolic context, in a very turbulent world, because Donald Trump, the US president, and the Trump tariffs are literally upending the global trading order. The Indo-US FTA negotiations are stuck. So basically, by doing this deal and signing it just a day before Trump himself is all set to land in the UK, India and Britain are saying to Trump, look, we are open for business. So what may that mean, both in the context of India-UK bilateral trade and also in the global context in which this comes, where the order of the day seems to be protectionism, tariffs, and barriers to trade, not the free movement of goods and services. I want to first bring you up to speed with what this India-UK FTA means in the bilateral context. It enhances market access both for British products and Indian products, but it also opens up some of the sensitive sectors. It is poised to generate substantial economic benefits across a whole cross range of industries. It will also possibly deepen strategic ties with the UK. Let's look at it sector-wise. Currently, UK tariffs anywhere between 8 to 16% as a general weighted tariff. It could, of course, differ from item to item. This is expected to come down, particularly in key areas like textiles. The hubs like Tirupur and Surat and Ludhiana, they will really benefit. Companies like Wellspun, Arvind, etc. will benefit big time from the lowering of duties in textiles. There'll also be zero duty access in footwear. So manufacturers, small manufacturers in places like Agra, Kanpur, Chennai, they will benefit. Companies like Bata, Relaxo will also benefit because of the footwear duties being restricted. Cars, particularly electric vehicles and hybrid car makers, both Tata Motors and Mahindra will benefit immensely from reduced import tariffs and preferential quotas. Right now, they sell a few thousand cars that are exported from India to the UK. That could be tens of thousands with the removal of these duties. Also, removal of British duties up to 16% will aid exporters in gems and jewelry, other small machine parts, auto components, etc. These industries largely based out of Tamil Nadu, Gujarat and Maharashtra. Zero tariffs will also benefit companies like Bharat Forge and others who specialize in auto components and engineering goods. There will also be improved market access for Indian pharma companies in the UK. There will be reduced or zero tariffs, which will provide an export boost to furniture, toys, sporting goods, chemicals and machinery. Let's listen in to what both the Prime Ministers had to say as they oversaw the signing off of this historic FTA between India and the UK.
मुझे प्रसन्नता है कि कई वर्षों की मेहनत के बाद आज दोनों देशों के बीच कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव इकोनॉमिक एंड ट्रेड एग्रीमेंट संपन्न हुआ है। यह समझौता मात्र आर्थिक साझेदारी नहीं, बल्कि साझा समृद्धि की योजना है। एक और भारतीय टेक्सटाइल, फुटवियर, जेम्स एंड ज्वेलरी, सी फूड और इंजीनियरिंग गुड्स को यूके में बेहतर मार्केट एक्सेस मिलेगा। भारत के एग्रीकल्चर प्रोड्यूस और प्रोसेस्ड फूड इंडस्ट्री के लिए यूके की मार्केट में नए अवसर बनेंगे। भारत के युवाओं, किसानों, मछुआरों और एमएसएमई सेक्टर के लिए यह समझौता विशेष रूप से लाभकारी सिद्ध होगा।
It is a deal that will bring huge benefits to both of our countries, boosting wages, raising living standards, and putting more money in the pockets of working people. It is good for jobs, it is good for business, cutting tariffs and making trade cheaper, quicker and easier.
I want to go across to my colleague Anand Narasimhan, who's joining us live from London in what is a wet and rainy afternoon there in London. But a very important agreement, this, the FTA being signed between India and the UK. It's been years in the making. They've been negotiating formally since 2022. But this is something that Britain was talking about since Brexit happened, which was almost, God knows, a decade ago.
Yes, it is raining. The forecast was for a sunny day, Zakka, and to our viewers. But I think the sun is shining on the CETA while it pours all around in London. So because they are all farther away, about an hour and a half drive from London at the Luton Hoo Hotel. That's where the Prime Minister is staying. The engagements were at the Chequers, the UK Prime Minister's residence. And anybody and everybody who we are speaking to here in London is only hailing this deal. As much as it is important for Bharat, it is important for Britain too. And somewhere there are those who believe that Britain needed it more because it needed to show a win to its people that Brexit made sense. And you were talking about it, that Brexit, one of the first things was that UK can engage in trade agreements and deals with other nations. It is not bound by the European Union, and that has come to fruition about a decade and a half later. But in this case, one of the biggest Phillips is the market opportunity for labor-intensive Indian industry. The MSMEs, the agriculture industry, footwear industry, marine industry, all of these have now an opportunity to sell their wares, sell their produce at zero tariffs. And that means there will be a huge fillip in terms of production, export, job creation, and especially, like I said, in these labor-intensive sectors. And that is what Bharat needs. It's a big win for us as a nation that we've been able to make this happen. And other nations will be watching. Other nations with whom we are engaging in talks, other entities with whom we are engaging in talks will be watching, and they will say that, okay, we also need a share of this pie. India as a market, most economists believe, is a market that is also shaping itself, becoming far more robust economically in terms of policy. And they also believe that this is a country that can be trusted, can show stability in governance, is a vibrant democracy with a huge demographic dividend. So all that Prime Minister Narendra Modi had been selling for the last decades to the world is now saying it back. So finally it's sunk in. And perhaps this is the biggest proof of it, Zakka. And that's why it's significant. And along with that, look at the strategic partnership or the agreement which Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri speaks about, that the CBI and the UK, crime agency have now signed a partnership deal. So fugitive offenders, those who have defrauded the system, criminals who are there, all of them could now be repatriated or extradited back into Bharat to be brought to justice under our judicial system. Right. The other part is also in terms of extremists. The Prime Minister sending out a big message by skipping London because of what happened over the last 2 years when he visited, or even when the Foreign Minister visited. I think these are all messages, and that messaging was there even in the press briefing. And I think there is an understanding from both sides. Look at it. You study geopolitics, and you understand that Labour was never a fan of India or parties and the political disposition. And it is the Labour Party that is actually engaging India so much. So I think that is also a shift which, Bharat has been able to manage with nations, leaders who came on an anti-India plank, and now they are engaging very strongly and actively with Bharat. So I think those are big wins for us to take.
Absolutely. Labour was certainly not pro-India. It was certainly not pro-free trade. So on both of those counts, I think today was groundbreaking indeed. Thank you very much, Anand, for joining us live from central London. I also want to go across to a very special guest. Lord Karan Bilimoria is member of the House of Lords and also one of the most famous British Indian entrepreneurs. In fact, he was there at that signing ceremony of the FTA between India and the UK. Thank you very much, Lord Bilimoria, for speaking with us. We've been talking about this FTA for a number of years now, 3 years at least formally, and God knows, a decade informally. Finally, it got signed today in the presence of both the Prime Ministers. You were there in that room when the signing happened. Tell us, what was the mood like there, and why is this such a big deal in the context of Britain-India ties?
Well, I've just been with where the deal has just been signed with both prime ministers present, cabinet ministers from both countries, business leaders from both countries, and this is a real celebration because we have been working on this deal for a long time. We started the negotiations in early 2022 when I was president of the Confederation of British Industry, the CBI. And it took over 3 years of negotiations, 14 rounds, and finally on the 6th of May, it was announced. And now, within a few months, both prime ministers have just signed the deal, and soon it'll be ratified by our parliament here in the UK and also by the cabinet in India, and then it can be formally implemented. This is very good news for both countries, because not only is it removing lots of barriers, reducing duties, but putting it into perspective, India is now the 4th largest economy in the world. The UK is the 6th. India is the fastest growing major economy in the world. And yet, India is only the 11th largest trading partner of the United Kingdom. It should be one of the handful of largest trading partners of the UK. And I believe with this trade deal, the free trade agreement, the bilateral trade in goods and services, which is now 42 billion pounds between both countries, will more than double to over 80 billion pounds within 5 years, as this free trade agreement will turbocharge trade, business and investment between both our countries.
I also want you to put this in context for our viewers of the overall trade environment. Obviously, you know, the whole world over the last 6 months has been roiled and upended by the Trump tariffs. The global trading order, as we know it, has been completely, flipped inside out. How much experience has this taught us over the last 6 months, and particularly in the context in which this comes, the India-UK trade deal? What sort of signaling does that send to trading nations around the world, including the United States?
Well, this has been in the offing for a long time. It was a matter of closing the deal and the negotiations, because remember, it's a very comprehensive deal, and India has not done very many bilateral trade deals in its history. We used to do all our trade deals through the European Union when we were part of the EU. We rolled over 66 free trade agreements once we left the EU, and we've now done a few like the Australia, New Zealand, and now the India deal is the biggest deal that we've done as the UK. So it took time, but we've got there in the end. And of course, I'm now chair of the International Chamber of Commerce, the ICC, for the UK and also the regional coordinator for Europe. And the ICC is about trade, and it's about arbitration. And America makes up 13% of world trade. 87% of world trade is all the other countries, including the UK, the EU, India, and just the EU and China make up 30% of world trade. So we've got to carry on with the rules-based multilateral trading world order. And India and the UK, I think, are great partners. And the meeting now between the prime ministers on this visit is more than the FTA. It's also cementing the strategic partnership we have in defense, in security, in education, as well as the free trade agreement. Because India and the UK have got to be closer than ever going forward, particularly in the geopolitical environment that we're in at the moment.
All right, Lord Karan Bilamoria, thank you very much for joining us and putting that issue into perspective for our viewers. It is indeed a big deal for both India and the UK, and also coming in the context of all of these Trump tariffs, this is a huge messaging as well to Washington. Let's shift focus to some domestic political stories. Days after Jagdeep Dhankhar's shock resignation, details of what really happened are now tumbling out. Here's the inside story. Sources tell CNN News18 that Jagdeep Dhankhar reportedly wanted protocol equal to that of Prime Minister Modi. In fact, he would often say that while the Prime Minister is number 3 protocol-wise, because he's the Vice President, he is technically number 2, and therefore he should be accorded the same level of protocol as the Prime Minister. In fact, he's mentioned this in remarks with various ministers, in the presence of the ministers, and this, of course, has not gone down well with the powers that be. So clearly, there seems to be a case of where Mr. Dhankar forgot that the reason why he got to the position where he was because of the political power of the ruling party and the Prime Minister. It's because the ruling party had the numbers to elect him. That's why he became the Vice President. It seems like the power somehow got to his head if he was making such comments. I want to go across to Payal Mehta, who's joining us. So what we are seeing is, while the impeachment motion and the admission of that motion that was moved by the opposition was obviously the immediate trigger, this had been building for a number of weeks and months, where Mr. Dhankhar essentially thought that he was now a new power center in himself.
Well, absolutely. Isn't it surprising, Zakka, that he wanted to get the protocol that the Prime Minister probably got, very clearly trying to explain to the ruling side that, I am number two in terms of the, authority, whether it's the President of India followed by the Vice President of India. But, I need to get the same treatment and protocol as well. But multiple people explained to him that the Prime Minister's security is a different apparatus. It's not the same as any other leaders. And, of course, the Prime Minister is guarded by SPG. No other leader really is. But Mr. Dhankar, of course, was of no avail. This is not just the only thing. Calling in ministers, insulting them in front of other bureaucrats and officials, completely uncalled for. In fact, some senior ministers stood up to him and told him that we will not speak to you if the bureaucrats are around. We will only speak to you one-to-one as well. Putting out conversations in private into public. All of these things, actually really irked the BJP and of course the NDA leaders for quite some time right now. But like I said, the direction from the top was very simple, that he is a constitutional authority. We cannot go out and speak about him in a certain fashion. So even now, barring the tweet by the Prime Minister, you have not seen any utterances coming in from any minister in the government. And more importantly, even when he was asked, Zakka not to speak about the RSS by the RSS top brass, because he has a constitutional authority, should not be doing that because he is not an RSS or a BJP worker or a leader anymore. That was also obviously of no avail, and he got even more angry because he was advised not to speak on the RSS or any political matters.
I also do want to ask you, apparently there have been instances where I think in one of them he even publicly said that, in all government offices you have the photograph of the President of India, then the Prime Minister of India. He said he wanted to have the Vice President's portrait as well. I believe also when J.D. Vance, the US Vice President, came visiting back in April, he was going around saying, I'm his counterpart here in India. Why am I not getting the same protocol? Why am I not the one who's hosting him, and so on and so forth? Is this a case of, him thinking and getting too big for himself? Or is this that he felt like, he had the license to say these things because he was seen as, the chosen one of the ruling establishment?
Well, he wanted to stamp his authority at all times, so he even tried to tell senior ministers in the government that they should not forget they are speaking to the Vice President of India, no less, and he knows what the Constitution is and what Constitution values really are. In terms of the J.D. Vance episode, that was actually one major episode that actually led him to, closing up his ties with the opposition leaders, because he basically felt that J.D. Vance was his counterpart. In fact, I'm given to understand senior ministers in the government, including the External Affairs Minister, explained to him that Mr. Vance had come forth to India to send in a message from the establishment for Prime Minister Narendra Modi and not for him as well. But that did not satisfy his ego, if I may say so. And he then called in bureaucrats from the External Affairs Ministry and blasted them for not giving him that protocol or that meeting as well. So that's something which he's spoken about openly, not only before the opposition MPs, but even on occasions when NDA MPs have been sitting with him as well. The one thing which has been there of Mr. Jagdeep Dhankhar, Mr. Jagdeep Dhankhar was not scared of anything. He did not really care, whether or not his words would go back to the people who matter in the government. He was completely of the fact that this is what it is. I am the Vice President of India. Nobody needs to teach me a lesson. So going high on power is something that he really did, and many within the establishment felt that because the government of the day chose not to publicly embarrass him or teach him a lesson or two, that probably encouraged him even more.
Okay, we'll leave it at that, Payal. Thanks for joining us and bringing us that exclusive story on the inside story as to what led to Dhankhar's exit. It's not just what happened on Monday, but it had been building up for weeks and months. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court today has reserved its order in the high-profile Renuka-Swamy murder case, expressing serious concerns about the Karnataka High Court's decision to grant bail to Kannada actor Darshan. The apex court sharply criticized the manner in which the High Court handled the case, describing the bail order as a perverse exercise of judicial discretion. The top court raised questions about the adequacy of the lower court's evaluation of this case, particularly given the severity of the crime. The Renuka murder case, in which Darshan is the primary suspect, has sparked significant public outrage. Also, the handling of the accused's bail has become a focal point of the debate. So much so, he's now, you can see those pictures, he's seen partying in Thailand after the court gave him bail and allowed him permission to travel abroad. The Supreme Court today did not take kindly, particularly to the decision on the manner in which the bail was awarded to Darshan, as well as, of course, the court allowing him to travel abroad. I want to go across to Mr. Sumit Chandar. He's an advocate with the Supreme Court. Just bring us up to speed with why the court took grave exception to the High Court order granting bail to Darshan. Generally, Supreme Court is a little more lenient when it comes to matters of bail. But here in this case, even though it's reserved the order, and we'll know in the next few days what the order is, but it really came down like a ton of bricks on the High Court. Why is that?
See, there are certain reasons why the bail is to be granted, and it's been defined over a period of time. In this case in particular, what has happened is, while deciding on the bail application, the court was only to see a prima facie view. It has its discretionary powers. But what actually happened was that the court went into giving such detailed explanation for giving the bail that tomorrow, if the trial continues, the trial court is going to be influenced by the observations of the High Court. And that is where the Supreme Court says that, listen, discretionary power should be used, but restrict yourself to the certain the basic requirements and ingredients of a bail application. Don't go beyond and start talking about the facts of the case and what you think about it. Stop giving observations. And those are the aspects. So at this stage, it was wrong on part of the High Court to have gone into the depth and details of the facts of the case.
So what I'm also trying to understand is, usually, Supreme Courts come down hard on lower courts or on high courts because they're not granting bail to individuals. The court generally errs on the side of personal liberties and freedoms, etc. In this case, it's been quite the opposite. Can we have a standardized template where, if there's a person accused of a heinous crime, then there is a certain procedure for granting or not granting bail? Similarly, if it's a lighter crime, then there is a certain set template, because here it seems to vary from bench to bench and court to court.
In fact, more than bench to bench, Zakka, or court to court, let me rephrase this to say it depends totally on the facts of the case. So it's different depending as to the different what offences have been taken place. And even if the offences are same, then what was the role of the accused? What was the gravity of the offence? What were the circumstances in that offence? But at the stage of granting bail, there cannot be a fixed rule. That is why a discretionary power has been given to the courts. Now, bail, if it is started giving in a mechanical manner, then there's everybody would be able to start taking advantage of that mechanical manner, fulfill the requirements, and you're out on bail. No, so there cannot be. The court must consider the nature and gravity of the accusation, the severity of the punishment involved, the possibility of tampering with evidence, influencing the witness, or to a great extent fleeing from justice itself. So all these aspects have to be considered, and that is why a discretionary power has been given to the court. See the circumstances, make an observation, and then decide whether to grant a bail or not.
All right. Sumit Chandar, thank you very much for joining us and putting that issue into perspective. I'm told you'll be staying on for the next story as well. So let's go to that again deals with the Supreme Court. Again, a significant decision today. The Supreme Court has stayed the Bombay High Court verdict, which acquitted all 12 accused in the 2006 Mumbai train blast case. It's limited in nature in the sense that this acquittal cannot be used as a precedent in any other case. That's what the court has said today. Appearing for the Maharashtra government in the top court, the Solicitor General Tushar Mehta sought a stay on the verdict. He did not press for a stay on the release of the acquitted persons. The court said that since all the accused were already released, there was no question of sending them back to prison. Remember, in the order earlier this week, the Bombay High Court had noted that the prosecution had utterly failed to prove its case against the accused. Let's listen in to some reactions coming into the story and why the decision today by the court. It's made a distinction. It has stayed the verdict, the acquittal of the High Court, but at the same time, it has not reversed the release of these convicts. Let's listen in.
In what could be termed as a big relief to the Maharashtra Anti-Terrorist Court, the Supreme Court today, in fact, stayed the judgment rendered by the Bombay High Court in the 7/11 Mumbai blast case. The topmost court of the country though has stayed the verdict of the Bombay High Court, it doesn't mean that the accused would have to come back to the jail since the court has not given a stay on their acquittal at this particular point of time. They'll still be released. However, the acquittal remains under a challenge as of yet as well. However, the judgment would not be treated as a precedent before any court, because the Solicitor General of India, Mr. Tushar Mehta, while the court was actually hearing the particular matter, very categorically told the court that if at all this judgment is used as a precedent, a lot of cases under the stringent MCOCA or the Makoka Act would get affected, and that's exactly why the Supreme Court felt that this order needs to be passed and the judgment needs to be stayed. The Bombay High Court, while it had given out this verdict acquitting all the 12 accused in the Mumbai train blast case, had said that the prosecutions utterly failed to prove the case beyond reasonable doubt, and there seems to be some mismatch that is there, and in fact there is no belief that the accused could have committed that particular crime, is what the Bombay High Court had said. However, challenging that particular order, the Maharashtra ATS and the Maharashtra government knocked the doors of the Supreme Court, and now finally from the Supreme Court they've secured a stay on this judgment rendered by the Bombay High Court.
The Supreme Court of India today has stayed the operation of the Bombay High Court decision, and on behalf of my party, on behalf of the people of Mumbai who want justice, I welcome that decision, and I have full faith that the Maharashtra government will do everything in its power to impress upon the Supreme Court that Mumbai and the Mumbaikars who lost their life, who were injured, should be given justice as soon as possible.
मैं उसका स्वागत करता हूँ, लेकिन बहुत दुखी हूँ क्योंकि जो कुछ हुआ है वो बहुत शर्मनाक है मुंबई पुलिस और हमारे महाराष्ट्र सरकार के लिए। दर्दनाक है क्योंकि 180 से ज्यादा लोग घायल हुए, मृत्यु हुई, घायल तो 700-800 लोग घायल हुए थे।
The other big international story today, tensions are rising between Cambodia and Thailand following a recent face-off over a disputed border area. Cambodian officials claim that Thai soldiers crossed into their land, and that prompted a strong reaction from Cambodia's military. Thailand, though, argues that its forces were conducting regular patrols well within their own borders. So far, over 10 people have been killed. Many of them happen to be Thai civilians. So much so that Thailand today dispatched a couple of F-16s to go into an operation at the disputed border between both countries. Diplomatic discussions are also underway, but the situation remains extremely tense. Here's why this over 100-year-old dispute has flared up in such a violent way just in the last few weeks. Cambodian and Thai troops clashed Thursday along their heavily contested border. It ended up wounding several civilians and killing at least one. This has now set off the evacuation of residents in the area. It's also hit the lowest point in diplomatic relations between both countries. The Thai army says that 9 civilians have been killed and 14 others injured in these clashes. Cambodia has not officially responded to this. Shots were heard early Thursday morning near the Prasad Thamwa Thong, which is an ancient temple on the Thai side of the border. The temple's ownership is disputed by both countries. The Thai army says the Cambodian army had fired 2 Russian-made rockets into the civilian areas of Surin province, killing 1 person and injuring at least 3. The Cambodian government is yet to comment on the deaths of these people. The standoff has brought Thai-Cambodia relations to their lowest point in decades. It was ignited back in May by a skirmish between Thai and Cambodian troops on the border, which led to the death of a Cambodian soldier. The two neighbors in Southeast Asia have had occasional military clashes over the years, but this has been a long-standing nationalist rivalry for over 100 years. Here's a timeline of what has happened over the years. It started in 1907. The border dispute can be traced back to a map that was issued in 1907 that was created during the French colonial rule in Cambodia. The map was the basis of Cambodia's claims to certain parts of the border, but the map was also vague in certain areas, and that led to conflicting interpretations. Thailand contested the map. The two countries then tried to resolve the dispute diplomatically, but the issue was never really settled completely. Even after transnational bodies like the International Court of Justice intervened in 1962, the matter was never really fully settled. At stake were centuries-old historic temples at the contested site. Between 2008 and 2011, military fighting has broken out intermittently since then. The last time tensions turned deadly was in 2011, when the fighting focused on a jungle border including ancient temples to which both sides had laid claim. Each side has blamed the other for starting and prolonging the conflict. The two nations declared a ceasefire after 7 days of fighting, which killed at least 15 people and displaced tens of thousands of civilians. That same year, a United Nations court ordered the two countries to withdraw their troops and establish a demilitarized zone. But the court left unresolved who would control the larger disputed territory where troops kept clashing with each other. In May this year, the border dispute worsened yet again. In a skirmish between the two countries, a Cambodian soldier was killed. The soldier's death brought relations between both countries to the lowest point seen in years. The following month, in June of this year, Prime Minister Paetongtarn Shinawatra of Thailand spoke with Cambodia's de facto leader Hun Sen. That call was meant to resolve tensions between both countries, but a few days later, a recording of that phone call that Hun Sen posted on his Facebook page ignited an outcry in Thailand. The Thai Prime Minister in that phone call is heard urging Hun Sen to ignore the Thai military. He also referred to the Thai side as the opposite side and called Hun Sen as uncle. She also offered to arrange anything that he wanted to end the fighting. Her comments drew widespread condemnation from Thai lawmakers, both within her coalition and also in the opposition. They said that she appeared to disparage her own country's military and took too much of a differential tone with another country's leader. Thai leaders called on her to resign. Then in July of 2025, this month, Thailand's Constitutional Court suspended Paetongtarn, accepting a petition to the court that was brought by a group of senators who wanted to remove her as Prime Minister. They accused her of violating ethics standards in her phone call with the Cambodian leader. Once again, the Thai Prime Minister apologized and she said that personal gain had not been the purpose of her conversation with Hun Sen. But the court went ahead and ordered her suspension from the post of Prime Minister. And now, in the latest bout of fighting, a Thai soldier lost his right leg in a landmine explosion. Thailand subsequently said it's going to downgrade diplomatic relations with Cambodia. It also recalled its ambassador to Cambodia and expelled Cambodia's ambassador in Bangkok. And then on Thursday, the Thai army ordered immediate evacuation of the border area in Surin province. The Thai army also confirmed it had sent F-16 fighter jets to strike targets in Cambodia. Meanwhile, moving on, in a historic feat, 19-year-old rising Indian chess star Divya Deshmukh has made the headlines by becoming the very first Indian woman to qualify for the finals of a FIDE Women's World Cup. This win also secures her spot in the prestigious candidates tournament that will happen next year in 2026, making her the first teenager in over 3 decades to reach this stage. Divya, who faced off against China's experienced Tan Zhongyi in the semi-finals, was seen as the underdog in that clash. In fact, the Chinese grandmaster was seated higher than Divya in the world rankings, and yet it turned out to be a very thrilling match. Divya Deshmukh pulled off a very impressive victory, moving just 1 step away from the World Cup title. However, the young star reflected pretty humbly on her performance, admitting that she could have played better even though she beat a higher-ranked Chinese grandmaster, and she expected a smoother path to victory. Let's listen in to India's latest chess sensation, Divya Deshmukh.
Divya, what an amazing and thrilling game. You've just qualified for the candidates, you've qualified for the final, you've just done a Grandmaster norm. You must be ecstatic. What are your feelings now, Divya?
I don't know. I think I could have played much better. I was winning from a certain point, and then it got complicated, and I think I messed up in the middle game. But yeah, I think I should have had a much smoother win, and she put up such a good fight. At some point, I was just doubting if it's a draw, but I think I got lucky in the end. I'm not sure if there was a draw at any point, but
you'll see later on.
yeah, I think there was.
Okay. Thousands of followers have been watching the game, thrilled with the performance. What do you have to say to them that they've been following you all the afternoon?
Thank you so much for all your love and support. I don't really have much to say. My thoughts are not clear right now.
But now you have 2 extra days. What are you going to do with these 2 days before the final?
I need some sleep. These days have been so anxious. I just need some sleep and some food.
Okay. Divya Deshmukh, the first qualifier for the Women's World Cup final.
All right, some other international stories. And Donald Trump, when he came to office, he promised to drain the swamp. But now the US president finds himself wading through rather murky waters yet again. It turns out that Trump's name appears multiple times in internal Justice Department files which are linked to the sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Now, according to the Wall Street Journal, which put out a big story earlier today, Attorney General Pam Bondi, who herself finds herself in the line of fire, apparently told President Trump back in May that his name was in the Epstein files. There was a classic denial at that time, and this denial has been put out by the White House even now. But the catch in this story happens to be that the White House at that time did not actually deny that the president's name appears in the files. They just said that there was no evidence of wrongdoing. So what happens next in this whole Trump-Epstein saga? Because this seems to be consuming Trump's base, the MAGA base, in a way that we haven't seen any other story over the last 6 months that he's been in office. I want to go across to a very special guest who's now joining us. Alan Dershowitz is the former lawyer of Jeffrey Epstein. Thank you very much, Mr. Dershowitz, for speaking with us. I want your first reactions to this story by the Wall Street Journal, which says, or it seems to indicate, that Mr. Trump, President Trump, was informed multiple times as far back as May that his name is there in the Epstein files and that he denied it.
Everybody's name's in the Epstein files. Bill Gates is in the Epstein files. Half the famous people in the world are in the Epstein files. He had a lot of friends. He used to conduct seminars at Harvard. The president of Harvard is in the Epstein files. I'm in the Epstein files. Everybody's in the Epstein files. The question is, did anybody do anything wrong? There have been many, many false accusations. For example, a woman named Sarah Ransom accused Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, Richard Branson of having sex with underage children. She said there were videotapes of it. She then admitted she made up the whole story. So the fact that a person's name is in the files, that he flew on Epstein's planes, his lawyers, his accountants, people who worked with him flew on his planes, there's nothing to the fact that Trump's name is in the Epstein files. Of course they knew each other. There are photographs with each other. They attended parties together. I saw them together once when an astronaut came back from outer space and was showing photographs, and Epstein invited prominent people to his home to see the photographs. There's nothing incriminating about being, in quote, in Epstein's files. There's no list of Epstein's people who he may have trafficked people to. There's no such list. That's a fake.
Why then is the White House so cagey about releasing these documents? They have all the documents. They've gone to a grand jury, and I believe a judge has put a stay or declined to entertain their request of putting these documents out in the public. I believe aside of that, the Justice Department still has a lot of documents which they are refusing to release. Why? If his name is, as you say, it's there, but there's nothing to hide, why are they reluctant to put out the files? Put it in the public domain.
They should. And I said that from day one. But judges, 3 federal judges, now a 4th federal judge, has said no, they can't release the information. And the White House can't defy the order of a judge. By the way, the White House doesn't know some names on the list. I know more names than the White House does, than the Justice Department does, because I was Epstein's lawyer. And I saw some of the names that were on the list, but then they were redacted by the judge. So the judge won't let them produce those names. I think everybody would be better off if all the names were produced. But there are a lot of false accusations out there. There's a woman named Maria Farmer who made up stories about people. Turns out she's a Holocaust denier, a vicious anti-Semite, hates Epstein because he's Jewish. So, there are all kinds of false things out there and many true things. So the important thing is to separate the falsehood from the truth.
So what was President Trump, then Donald Trump, he was not president back then, what was he doing in the private plane and the island and the famous parties? I mean, because Mr. Epstein was found guilty. He was convicted of sexual offenses.
You have it all wrong. You're like so many other people in the media. You have the chronology all wrong. He wasn't even accused until 2005. All these events occurred years before that. Nobody knew. When the president of Harvard, when the provost of Harvard, when Nobel Prize winners sat at seminars with Jeffrey Epstein, they had no idea he had done anything wrong. Once he was found to have done things wrong, most of the people like me and others terminated any relationship with him. So get the chronology straight.
No, I got the chronology right. I'm sorry, Mr. Dershowitz. I'm not going to sit here and take that attack. I got the chronology right. I was asking you, what then was Mr. Trump doing in these private planes and these private islands and in these parties? What was he doing?
First of all, you're lying. He wasn't on any island. There's no proof he was ever on any island.
You just said that he was on a private plane and that you saw him at one of these parties. You just said it.
I saw him at an event with an astronaut at the home of Jeffrey Epstein. His name was on the list of people who flew on planes. Everybody flew on his planes.
So what was he doing flying in these private planes and taking part in these parties? What was he doing?
Wait. He didn't take part in these parties. He was invited to a party with adults who saw films of an astronaut from outer space. You are doing what the media is doing. You're conflating.
Mr. Dershowitz, there is no point you attacking the media.
Don't cut me off.
What you can do is to explain what Mr. Trump was doing. If you believe that he has nothing to hide, then please put that point of view to our viewers. There's no point you trying to attack me. I'm not the story. Mr. Trump is the story.
No, you are the story.
No, I'm not the story.
Yes, you are.
I don't live under that illusion at all.
He was on the plane for the same reason that the presidents of universities, the Nobel Prize winners, they were traveling to places to have seminars. He would have seminars all over the country for distinguished scientists and Nobel Prize winners before anybody ever knew that anything was wrong.
So you are saying, Mr. Epstein, Mr. Dershowitz, sorry, extremely sorry about that. You're saying, Mr. Dershowitz, that all of these parties and all of these events that Mr. Epstein had, there was no hanky-panky, there was no wrongdoing up until 2005 when the accusations first came out, and none of the attendees of any of these parties either knew about this or indulged in any of these hanky-pankies. That's what you're saying?
That's absolutely correct. And if it weren't true, there would be obviously information about that. What you're doing is you're accusing some of the most distinguished people in the world, Nobel Prize winners, academics, presidents of universities, of wrongdoing.
I am not. No, I'm sorry. Again, Mr. Dershowitz, I'm not going to sit here and take your attack without retorting. No, sorry. I'm sorry, Mr. Dershowitz. You were the lawyer of a man who was convicted for sex offenses. There are a lot of famous people who've attended his parties, including the current president. And it's the current president who seems to be, for whatever it's worth, as you say, if his name is not there and he's not guilty, I don't know why he is bending over backwards to deflect from this story. It's a legitimate question. And if you have a point of view as to why he's doing that, please put it forth for our viewers. I'm sorry, I don't think your cause, as it were, is being served by attacking the media. I'm sorry about that.
First of all, you are being an absolute McCarthyite. You're blaming lawyers for their clients' activities. Yes, I was his lawyer, but I didn't do anything wrong. And the people who knew him before that didn't do anything wrong. You are creating the problem. You are the issue, not Donald Trump.
Your contention entirely is none of these good folks before 2005 who were partaking in these parties and going to these seminars and traveling on Mr. Epstein's planes and going to his private island had no damn clue what was going on. That's your argument. That is your argument.
wait a minute. Now you're doing the McCarthyism again. Went to these islands. Show me the name of one person who went to these islands. One person who went to these islands. Name
There's a
one
whole
person.
flight logs.
Give me the name.
There are thousands
Sir,
of pages of flight
give
logs,
me-
Mr. Dershowitz.
give
Come
me-
on.
No,
All right.
no, there aren't. There isn't a
We'll
single
leave it at that.
flight
The
log
flight logs have
of
been
any-
produced
no,
in
listen
court.
to me now for a change.
They
There
have been
isn't a
produced
single
in court.
flight
They are
log.
part of ongoing investigations. They're part of
lying.
ongoing
You are
evidence that's been
lying.
presented in
You
courts of
are
law. All right,
lying.
Mr.
You are
Dershowitz,
lying
look,
to your
thank
listeners.
you,
Now, you
thank
wanna
you
listen-
very
you
much for
wanna
joining
listen?
us. I don't think it's serving your cause or your case or your former client, as it were, by you attacking the media. But we'll leave it at that. But I want to bring our viewers up to speed with what exactly is this case. Because now, Trump, a couple of days ago, in the presence of the Philippine president, who was a visiting guest in the White House, just completely went on a rant and said it was Obama, it was a Russia hoax, he's instituted an inquiry. And then yesterday, the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, has said, and I quote her, there is irrefutable evidence against President Obama for starting what she called the Russiagate scandal or the Russia hoax scandal. Critics of Mr. Trump say this is simply a divert and deflect strategy from the Epstein saga, which simply doesn't seem to be going away, no matter how much the president and his team try to brush it aside. US President Donald Trump, under fire over his government's handling of the Epstein files, has escalated his attack strategy, and he's now directly targeted his predecessor. Trump has accused former President Barack Obama of treason and declared that it's time to go after people. Speaking to reporters at the Oval Office, President Trump condemned questions about the disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein as a sort of witch hunt. And then he launched into a tirade against his Democratic opponents, including Obama, Biden, and Hillary Clinton, and even against the mainstream media.
But you know what? If you look at those papers, they have them stone cold, and it was President Obama. It wasn't lots of people all over the place. It was them too. But the leader of the gang was President Obama, Barack Hussein Obama. Have you heard of him? And except for the fact that he gets shielded by the press for his entire life, that's the one they look. He's guilty. It's not a question. You know, I like to say, let's give it time. It's there. He's guilty. This was treason. This was every word you can think of. They tried to steal the election. They tried to obfuscate the election. They did things that nobody's ever even imagined, even in other countries.
Trump was also referring to a report from Tulsi Gabbard, the Director of National Intelligence, which tried to undermine the 8-year-old assessment that Russia favored Trump's election in 2016. Trump has been consistently saying that it was the Democrats who propped up what he calls the Russia hoax, which somehow said that Putin had helped Trump get elected in 2016 when he first won the White House. Trump's extended digression came during a visit with President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. of the Philippines. This was a stark example of Trump's campaign of retribution against an ever-growing list of enemies, Obama and Biden being top of that list. It even prompted a rare response from former President Barack Obama's office. And this is what that response read, and I quote, "These bizarre allegations are ridiculous and a weak attempt at distraction. Nothing in the document issued last week undercuts the widely accepted conclusion that Russia worked to influence the 2016 presidential election, and it did not successfully manipulate any votes." Unquote. After Trump's no-holds-barred attack on Obama, reports continue to surface about Trump's own troubled relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. CNN published photographs of Epstein at Trump's 1993 wedding to Marla Maples, who is the president's second wife. They even spoke to Epstein's brother, who claimed that both Trump and his late brother were extremely close friends.
It was about 2006 when he first got into trouble. You know, it's known prior to Jeffrey's death, you know, I hadn't seen him for 7 years, although we were always in touch, you know, communication with telephone or emails, but we just never got together. And for the 12 years prior to that period of time, from like 2004 until 2008, we only got together maybe a half a dozen times or so, but we were always in contact. And in 2006, Jeffrey asked me to come up to his place uptown. He wanted to talk to me. So I was uptown, I stopped by. I'm not uptown all that much back then. I live downtown, and I sort of joke. I say to go above 14th Street, I need a visa. But so I went to talk to him, and that's when he told me that he was getting in trouble for being with girls that were too young. He said he was stupid, but he wanted me to hear it from him as opposed to hearing it on the news or something. And that's when I first found out.
But Trump chose to focus on a report by the intel chief Tulsi Gabbard. Gabbard's report has claimed that there was a treasonous conspiracy by top Obama-era officials to blame Trump for a Kremlin-funded conspiracy to interfere in the 2016 election. But this latest report is directly contradicted by a lengthy study conducted by the Senate Intelligence Committee that was signed by all Republican members of the committee. And that included Marco Rubio, who's currently the Secretary of State. The Obama administration never contended that the Russians had manipulated votes. Instead, Obama and the Democrats, as well as the Republicans on the Senate Intelligence Committee, had concluded that Russia did mount a major effort to influence voters in 2016. But Trump is having none of it. He struck an extremely defiant note at the Oval Office briefing. He claimed that he could have sent Hillary Clinton, the former Secretary of State and another one of his political rivals, to prison, but he chose not to. He said he would show no such leniency to Obama this time.
Well, based on what I read, and I read pretty much what you read, it would be President Obama. He started it. And Biden was there with him, and Comey was there, and Clapper, the whole group was there. Brennan, they were all there in a room. Right here, this was the room. This is much more beautiful than it was then, but that's okay.
The president then listed even more enemies who he wanted his Justice Department to target, including former FBI Director James Comey, whom he fired rather unceremoniously. And further than that, in that list are James Clapper, who's the former Director of National Intelligence, and former President Joseph Biden himself. Trump's campaign to exact revenge against his perceived enemies has taken on many forms over the years. Over the last 6 months, he has pulled protective security details from former colleagues who've been facing death threats from Iran. He's also revoked or threatened to revoke the security clearances of Biden and his family, as well as officials from the previous White House. His administration has taken steps to target members of the media, university campuses. He's also fired or investigated government workers who were deemed to be disloyal. The re-examination of the intelligence around the 2016 election began with John Ratcliffe, who's the current CIA director. He had ordered a review of the agency's report that went into the intelligence community's assessment that was made in December of that year.
Co-presented by... This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
Vice-President Jagdeep Dhankar's sudden resignation has sparked a political fallout, revealing simmering tensions within the government. Sources say Dhankhar frequently clashed with senior ministers, even humiliating them during conversations. But this obviously the falling out after the Vice-President has resigned, and many try to understand why it is that it seemed that the government was upset with him. This is, of course, one version of events being patched together. Reports now coming through ahead of the US Vice President's visit, a report that he demanded his portrait be displayed alongside the Prime Minister's, requested for a Mercedes. These are just reports coming in from sources right now, as many try to piece together exactly what could have happened that led to this abrupt resignation. We're just playing out reactions for you.
सर, दो मसले पे सरकार और आप लोग आमने सामने हैं। उपराष्ट्रपति के इस्तीफे का मसला और एसआईआर का मसला। उपराष्ट्रपति को लेकर चुनाव आयोग ने तैयारी शुरू कर दिया। विपक्ष की तरफ से उम्मीदवार को लेकर कोई बातचीत हो रही है?
देखिए, अब तक इस बारे में कोई बातचीत नहीं हुई है, लेकिन ये एक बहुत ही इम्पोर्टेंट मसला है उपराष्ट्रपति का, और हम इंडिया ब्लॉक के लोग एक साथ बैठकर उस बारे में निर्णय लेंगे।
तो साझा उम्मीदवार देंगे जैसे पिछली बार दिया था?
डेफिनेटली देंगे।
Okay, we're going to go over to our two reporters on this story, Payal and our colleague Pallavi, both joining us on this story. Payal, since the abrupt resignation of the Vice President, many trying to piece together exactly what happened that evening that could have led to this. Now more stories coming through. Could you shed a light?
This is not an overnight, decision by the Uprashtrapati himself is what we're given to understand. But as far as his behavior with certain leaders within the ranks are concerned, it has been putting a lot of things into peace. Given the fact that he constantly had abruptions, he had run-ins with ministers in the government. He was very very dismissive of certain senior ministers in the government. All of this is coming to the fore right now, given the fact that on that day itself, Toya, he was approached by the government on 3 occasions throughout the entire day. First, JP Nadda and Kiran Rijiju, then Kiran Rijiju and Arjuna Meghwal. Finally, Mr. Arjuna Meghwal trying to tell him that, this is a united way in which everybody wants to take up the issue of Justice Verma. But the Vice President of India at that point in time probably was not even willing to listen to the government. He just kept on telling them that he knows what his duties really are and he needs no lecture on that. So that is something which has come to the fore. Of course, his behavior over the last 6-7 months, there are no surprises of knowing that he's been very, very dismissive of ministers in the government. About 6 to 7 months ago, on a public platform, he had humiliated Agriculture Minister Mr. Shivraj Singh Chauhan, after which, of course, there was a lot of back and forth between the government and him. And then he had to come out and say that Shivraj Singh Chauhan is actually a well-wisher of the farmers. So his behavioral traits, the way he would dismiss the ruling side, the fact that he became over-friendly with the opposition side, a lot of theories coming to the fore. But, what we are able to understand that Mr. Dhankar had seen a 360-degree change in behavior over the last 1.5 years is what we're given to understand, and not very becoming of the vice president. It's a constitutional post. It is his duty to keep everybody together. It is his duty to listen to all sides. But on that day itself, despite 3 attempts being made by the government saying that yes, we are also getting signatures done, the signatures are for the same cause, we submitted it into Lok Sabha. And very importantly, Mr. Dhankar met Kiran Rijiju on Sunday afternoon. Mr. Rijiju conveyed the same thing to him. Back then also, Mr. Dhankar gave no hints whatsoever that he was in receipt of the opposition motion and that he was going to admit it. And even before that, 4 to 5 days before that, also senior ministers in the government had in fact approached Mr. Dhankar, told him about the entire thing, because it is the duty of the government to keep the chair also appraised over what's happening and what is the business that is really coming in. But what business comes in is obviously the business of the government and business of the Parliamentary Affairs Minister. But
Okay.
Mr. Dhankar was extremely dismissive, and that's actually shocking. So much so that when he went to resign, submit his resignation to the President of India, it is learned that many senior ministers in the government also discovered about this only when they saw the resignation letter on social media. There was no opinion taken from the government. There was no opinion taking in from the Prime Minister. There was no appointment sought with the President of India. He suddenly went to the President House, waited for about 25 minutes, met with the President of India and left from there after 40 minutes of going there as well. So a lot of things leading up to what really has transpired. But so far, the BJP government and the NDA government have maintained that they did not say anything and will continue to not say anything about the Vice President because they considered him to be a constitutional post.
Okay, let's go over to our colleague Pallavi to understand more. Pallavi, can you explain to us how does the opposition see this, especially now that multiple sources are revealing seeming incidents that the Vice President had engaged in the last year that actually led up to this?
So,
does
Toya,
the opposition see it as convenient? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, we have been reporting on this also, that it all actually began on the 8th of July, according to Congress sources. That is when they decided that there has to be a second impeachment motion. They would want to move on their own and need not necessarily club it with that of the government, and that would be in Rajya Sabha. There were 65 opposition MPs who signed an impeachment motion against Justice Verma. Their plan was essentially also to trap the government on the other impeachment notice that they had given was on Justice Yadav of the Allahabad High Court. It is after the 65 MPs signed it, they took a copy of that, what we are being told, to the Vice President of India. You saw those pictures of Mr. Kharge. Jairam Ramesh also spoke to him on 21st evening and just before 22nd when he resigned, just to ask him what is happening. Now, what really took the government by surprise, which is what Payal is also referring to, is the fact that suddenly the former Vice President spoke about an impeachment notice which was pushed forward by the opposition parties. He didn't reject it. He said, it has come into my knowledge and I'm going to look into it, and there is a Business Advisory Council meeting later today and let's think about it then. That is what is believed to have upset the government, because government is not being, sheepish or messy over here.
Viewers, let me get to the point tonight straight away. No beating about the bush. Is Rahul Gandhi, the leader of the opposition, preparing to wage war, metaphorically, on the Indian state, like his grandmother did in 1975? Viewers, I need not tell you what happened in 1975. You all know that she imposed the emergency. Why? Because she felt threatened. Her hold over power was being questioned because of a misdemeanor. There was a ruling against her. She didn't like the ruling, so she used the constitution against itself, viewers. Some say the signs of that happening again are unmistakable. And they remind us that a few months ago, Rahul Gandhi said so himself. And now he's beginning to lay the ground. So what are these signs? To begin with, India's Election Commission, an independent constitutional body, has now been openly threatened. Threatened, viewers, threatened with the growl of a street thug. Rahul Gandhi says, and I quote, "We will come for you," unquote, viewers. Rahul Gandhi said, "I want to send a message to the Election Commission. If you think you are going to get away with it," and he's referring, viewers, to what he alleges is vote chori. If your officers, he says, think they're going to get away with it, you, EC, are mistaken. You're not going to get away with it because we are going to come for you. Do you get it? Unquote. That's what he said, viewers. Listen in.
I want to send a message to Election Commission. Yes, sir. If you think you're going to get away with this, if your officers think you're going to get away with this, you're mistaken. You're not going to get away with it because we are going to come for you. I want to send a message to Election Commission. Yes, sir. If you think you're going to get away with this, if your officers think you're going to get away with this, you're mistaken. You're not going to get away with it because we are going to come for you. I want to send a message to Election Commission. Yes, sir. If you think you're going to get away with this, if your officers think you're going to get away with this, you're mistaken. You're not going to get away with it because we are going to come for you.
Viewers, I only repeated this so that you would understand through constant repetition, it would sink in the import of these words. Is this the language of a Democrat? Is this the language of a leader of the opposition? Is this the language of a supposedly mature, responsible, compassionate leader who waves the Constitution in our faces to convince us that he respects the Constitution in spirit and in letter? Or is this the language of a demagogue drunk on entitlement, viewers? This question is an open one. The reason this question needs to be posed is because this is the first time in the latest of an increasing tendency to lean towards vengeful bullying. Now, Rahul Gandhi has been going to town saying that the Modi government is vengeful. He complains about vendetta from the treasury benches all the time. But viewers, ironically, when the law doesn't favor him, he desecrates it. When institutions don't bow, he bullies them. He becomes vengeful in turn. Sample this, viewers, and let me run you through some of these examples. I always get the hard facts and I pull out these bits and nuggets of research, viewers, so you can separate the wheat from the chaff. This is what Rahul Gandhi said recently. He said, the BJP and RSS have captured every single institution. And we are now fighting the BJP, the RSS, and the Indian state itself. Unquote. The Indian state. At another instant, viewers, just recently, about a week back, he threatened Himanta Biswa Sarma, the Assam Chief Minister, and I quote him, Rahul Gandhi. He says, he's aware that one day, he means Himanta Biswa Sarma, is aware that one day the lions of Congress will catch him and put him in prison. He knows that one day he will have to give details of the corruption indulged in by him and his family. Your Chief Minister, obviously, viewers, he's referring to Himanta Biswa Sarma, will be in jail after some time. And neither Modi nor Amit Shah will be able to save him, unquote. Other Congress allies are also dipping into the Rahul Gandhi playbook. Tejasvi Yadav has threatened to boycott the polls in a clear bid now to arm twist, emotionally blackmail the Election Commission, viewers. Tejasvi Yadav says, we're keeping the option of boycotting polls open. It seems that the government, which is